Hey all, Scott here from Art of the Genre, and today we have Folio Friday, and we're going to be having the third part of Folio number 1, and this is going to be an introduction to the dungeon and all the notes that I have on it. You can check out the previous 2 parts, which takes you through a lot of the Gazetteer material, but this will take you through the dungeon. First things first, one of the things that I did, obviously I've played this many times since I created it. And my friend Mark, who created it with me, he's my old DM from high school. He's run it as well. We've seen a lot of different scenarios run out of this dungeon, and it's got a lot of stories to tell, and there are always so many different wrinkles that can come into it. The dungeon version that I did for this particular folio was run with characters that were first introduced by my son in basic D&D. As you can see on the cover of the interior adventure booklet here, and also on the back cover of the adventure, there are a group of adventurers here. They were done by Travis Hansen, who did a fantastic job with them. The back cover piece is actually a piece that I got for my son on his 9th birthday with that party that initially set out in the Red Box Basic. So that's just a little bit of the history. There's a lot of great art in this, particularly done by Travis and Michael Wilson. There's also some great Jim Holloway pieces in here. But anyway, it's an awful lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing it, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. Now let me get right into the dungeon. A lot of people had questions when this first came out about how the dungeon works. It is something I call the Infernal Machine, which is it's kind of a magical creation. Mythalvarn's machine, he was a necromancer, and he has created this dungeon that populates itself magically by the opening and closing of doors. But I think even before that, you have to get into the concept of there are only a certain number of people allowed in this dungeon. Each dungeon only allows people that have one of 6 or so banners that are magically linked to the dungeon itself. When you go into the dungeon, in one of the before you even get into the first room, on the surface of Roslov Keep, you can see that there's a place that has the entrance for the dungeon, and then along the sides, I'd always pictured it having places for banner poles to be put in. Once the pole is put in, it signals the magical dungeon that this particular banner company is coming down, and it has to be one of these particular banners. Nobody else can come into this whatsoever. So there are only a certain number of people that can go in and try to take on the dungeon. That's very important in this module, and the banners become very important. That's why people are fighting for them and trying to control them in the various noble houses. So to get in, you place your banner. That tells everybody on the surface that you are down in the dungeon. So you can't sneak in. There are going to be people watching from the other houses, and if they want to try to attack you, they will know that you are in the dungeon. They also know when you come out. So it's highly important to understand that factor as well. But once your company gets into the dungeon, they are within a magical labyrinth that has a series of doors within it, in something that I call the Great Rectangle on the first level of this dungeon. And any door that you open automatically populates it with a monster. And once that monster is killed, the room is considered cleared by the dungeon by that banner company, or whoever's in charge of that banner company. To get to the second level of the dungeon, you have to clear every single room that's not a trap within the first level of the dungeon, so on and so forth, second and third. The dungeon keeps track of that. So it's not something that the players would necessarily have to keep track of, although they'll probably want to, but the DM will need to take control of that to make sure that they've gone through every single room here. Some of the rooms are considered to be open, which means some of them will have broken apparatus. They do not repopulate. And some of them have already been opened and have living members, particularly delving orc tribes in the first level, that are kind of have had their doors open. They were not defeated, and therefore they've been trying to re-bolster their numbers by opening other doors or finding other treasure. and kind of being adventurers themselves. So that's something to keep in mind here. One of the things as well, once you've cleared a room, you reclose the door. Once you open it again, it is going to spawn a randomly generated monster. That said, those monsters will be something that need to be determined by the DM. I have not put them in the adventure for a particular reason because I know people will go up in levels, so they will need to fluctuate to a certain degree because the dungeon itself is alive, it is aware, it is magical, and it can get pissed at players if they're just trying to milk the dungeon. So you can open it up goblin, open it up kobold, open it up goblin, open it up, and it could be, you know, a troll or something that they're not expecting, where the dungeon just says, hey, cut it out. So keep that in mind as a DM. You're in control of the dungeon. The dungeon has its own way of thinking and a way to play off of the characters. I've also put in a couple of what I would call named monsters within this dungeon. The first one of them being one of my absolute favorite things to use, and that is a kobold sorcerer. You can see a picture of him here by Michael Wilson. This is Gex. I love Gex. You can also find Gex in Curse of Roslov Keep, which is a high-level 6-part adventure that we've currently just finished up on Kickstarter. So you can see him there as well. There's also the Sly 6. This is another incredible piece that's an homage to a Jeff D piece. And it is also by Michael Wilson. You've got to check it out. The Sly 6. And those are two of the named monsters that you will find in the first level of the dungeon. Like I said, there are also orcs down here and a lot of other very common first level monsters that you will find. And probably the toughest things in here are going to be the Flame Brothers, which are a couple of salamanders. These were done by Travis Hansen. Check them out. I love these two. They've got a lot of stories to tell. I've had characters that have gone into this room. I once had somebody was playing a paladin, and the characters saw it and said, "Whoa, we're not going in this room. They're too powerful." And the paladin, drew out his sword and said, "Cowards," and ran in, and the party just slowly closed the door on him. And that was the end of the paladin. And then other ones, sometimes the Flame Brothers are within their forge. So I've had somebody else go in, a thief, and really wanted the items that were in the forge, got too close, and a spear came out and stuck him, and then the rest of the party fled. So they're an awful lot of fun to have in the adventure, as well as the named NPCs, so forth and so on. But I think that'll take you through the bulk of this first level of the Folio dungeon. Again, there are two other parts of this that go through the Gazetteer, which goes through all the politics, but that's the base of this dungeon. There are a couple cool traps in here. You can contract some diseases. There's all kinds of stuff to throw at players. And remember, this is the learning experience. These players should be first level when they go in here. And although in the reprint of this, which you can get on artofthegenre.com, I've included Welcome to House Aldenmere, which is Folio 1.5. That mini adventure is in there. So your characters will also get a little bit of taste of the dungeon before they actually take their banner, put it in, and go into the dungeon themselves. But this is a learning level. This kind of is going to instruct them on how they're going to get together as a party, how they're going to try to attack the dungeon, how they deal with other parties coming into the dungeon, and basically what kind of monsters are going to be down here. So it's a great learning experience. I say take your time. Usually the first level is the longest level for people to get through, and then everything speeds up from there. Nevertheless, that is part 3 of Folio number 1, the dungeon levels. Hopefully I've answered all the questions concerning the dungeon and how it thinks and acts. But if not, put any other questions below. Hopefully you'll check this one out, and you can also find this in the complete Roslov Keep, which has all 6 of the first folios in it, as well as all of their mini adventures compiled in one. So I hope you'll take a look at that. And again, thank you for patronizing Art of the Genre. Please hit subscribe and notify if you can. And otherwise, we'll talk to you on Monday with a new module from old TSR. Again, good gaming, and we'll talk to you later.